Welcome, everyone. It is 5:15 on Monday, January 11th, 2021, and the Carroll City Council meeting is now in session. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Please note everyone is in attendance. The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes of the December 21st meeting, approval of bills and claims. There are no licenses and permits this evening. We have one appointment to the Committee of Commission and Boards, Dennis Borman for the Historical Preservation Commission for a 3-year term to expire on 12/31/23. Are there any comments or questions with regards to the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. There's a motion and a second. There's no other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Seaman,
Yes.
Base,
Yes.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Dirks,
Yes.
Kotz,
Yes.
Haley.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Are there, and if anybody else is on from the public with regards, please unmute your mic. We have oral requests and communications from the audience at this time. Seeing none, we have no ordinances this evening, and we're going to jump down to the report since Jenny is here to go through the financial audit statement. And so we'll take up the fiscal year 2019-2020 annual financial statement audit. And Jenny, please.
Good evening. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
We have
You too.
the June 30th, 2020 audit. And as you are well aware, because you're not newbies, management is responsible for the presentation and preparation of these financial statements according to GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. We are on the cash basis, however, which means we do not take into account bills that have not been paid or revenue that has not been received. We're not on the accrual basis like businesses are, okay? My responsibility is to make sure that these financial statements are based on our audit, that we have conducted the audit according to the U.S. General Accepted Auditing Standards and the standards applicable to financial audits in the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. These standards require that we perform and plan to the audit for reasonable assurance about whether or not these financial statements are free from material misstatement. Audit includes performing procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and the disclosures. We also look at the note disclosures to make sure everything is correct. And in our opinion, these financial statements referred above present fairly in all material respects the respective cash balance, the financial statements of the government activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the City of Carroll as of June 30th, 2020, and the respective changes in cash balances for the financial position for the year then ended in accordance with the cash basis noted in Note 1, which we've discussed is the cash basis. Financial are that the governmental funds account for most of the city's basic services. And that's the general fund, the special revenue funds, such as road tax and local option sales tax, the debt service, capital projects, and the permanent funds. Then we have the proprietary funds, which are in essence all the utility funds. Internal service also. So we have water, sewer, storm sewer. These are the major funds that are reported on Schedule C. And then we have everything else through government on Schedule B, and everything government-wide on Schedule A. And you will note, if you flip to page 18 and 19, that's the government-wide cash position. Remember, you are not a business, you're not a for-profit. And in essence, what drives the city is what are we spending our money on? So that's the first column, the expenses. Governmental expenses, then business type expenses. And then how are we accounting and taking care of these expenses? Number one, charges for services, which is the second column. Then we have program revenues, operating grants, or other contributions that were made through government or otherwise. And then we have the capital grant contributions and restricted interest. So we end up with a deficit for all of our, for all of our governmental expenses and for the business. So how do we account for those? We bring in property taxes. We have debt service and general purpose property taxes. We have TIF money. We have property tax replacement, hotel tax, local option sales tax, franchise fees, bonds that we issued last year, and other miscellaneous funds. That accounts for $12,462, where we had a deficit from operating of 11 million. So you increase the cash balance for the governmental by $1,279,000. The ending cash balance then is the $14,960,000. For business type, you decreased your cash balance by $1,472,000. Cash balance was $9,932,000. It is now $8,459,000. The next page is the government, general fund, road use, local option, debt service, and capital projects. And then we have all the other miscellaneous funds, which if you're interested in the detail, you'll find behind the notes on Schedule 1, okay? That gives you also the detail by funds where the money is and where it's going. Schedule C reconciles our government-wide Schedule A to Schedule B because we have internal funds in the government-wide where we don't in the cash basis. Schedule or Exhibit D on 24 and 25 is the major funds for the utilities, the proprietary funds. We have water, sewer, stormwater, and other major proprietary, which we would find on Schedule 2. Totals then, we actually are making money for operating, column, total column, second from the right, $1,676,000. However, you spent over $2,299,000 on capital projects related to the proprietary funds. So the expenses are less than the income, and you reduced the fund balance by $1,491,000. And so the fund balance now for the governmental is $8,440,000. Schedule E is the reconciliation between the Schedule A for the government-wide versus the proprietary funds. Then we have all the notes. One of particular interest to you should be page 31, which tells you what balances that are going to be paid in the next 5 years and thereafter for the sewer revenue notes and all of the capital obligation notes. Currently, you have $10,436,000 worth of debt, which is way under your debt limit. Detail of the debt is on page 32. Compensated absences, which are the vacation time, compensatory time, and sick time that has not yet been paid out. For your information, if everybody who has this decided to quit, you'd have $216,000 to pay out. So we have transfers between funds. The detail is on the next page, on page 43. Then we have a little bit of business related between city officials and city of $1,317. That's immaterial, and it appears to be covered by the AG's letter saying that as long as it's an arm's length business done, you would have done otherwise, we're okay. Note 12 talks about the litigation that's ongoing. Note 13 is the development agreements and where we stand with those. And 14 is subsequent, saying that we did enter a construction contract after year end, and that you had, that's also a development agreement with BTC. That was after year end. So these are additional information for what's going to happen next year. The next page is the budgetary summary, and you did not exceed any of the functional areas in the budget. You cannot, you should not get your hand slapped if you did, but you did, so you're good. Then we have some IPERS information. And then we have Schedule 1 on page 60 and 61. The non-major funds are the employee benefits, the Urban Renewal Fund, the Ashwood Renewal Fund, the K-9 Fund, Recreation Center Trust, Police Forfeiture, Crime Prevention, Library Trust, permanent funds for the cemetery, perpetual care, and the Rec Center Trust. And the other non-major funds for the proprietary on page 62 and 63 is water depreciation, stormwater capital improvements, water meter deposit fund, the sewer depreciation, sewer capital improvement fund, and the water capital improvement fund. And then we have the schedule of indebtedness on Schedule 3, page 64, 65, giving you the detail. What did you originally borrow? How much did we start in debt at the beginning of the year? How much was issued? How much was paid? And what the balances are at the end of the year. Schedule 5 on page 66 is the detail of what's due on those notes for each of the years that we have. So you'll see that the debt goes down considerably in 2024 in totals. Schedule 5 is the capital projects fund. We have the street rehabilitation fund, the library, city hall, streets maintenance building. We have a housing fund, which is actually down to zero balance now, corridor of commerce, and we have airport, which is a deficit, and parks and recreation, and the equipment fund. Page 70 and 71 is governmental fund types for the last 10 years. So you have a comparison. Where did the money come in? Where did we spend it for the last 10 years? We have then the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with the governmental standards. This is where we're looking at big compliance. Did the mayor sign the minutes? Were they published within 15 days? All the little nuanced rules that the government says, thou shalt do this. This is where we report it. And you'll note that on page 74, we have an unmodified opinion, which is the good thing. They were issued on the financial statements, and we did not disclose any non-compliance that would be material to the financial statements. There were no internal control deficiencies and no instances of non-compliance. Then we have other findings, and we detailed the business transactions on page 76 in 3E20. We do have some excess balances. The rules are that you aren't supposed to have any more in the balance of the fund than what you spent the current year. We do have balances in special revenue road use, the Rec Center Trust, and the Library Trust, which are in excess of the disbursements those funds used this year. Capital project street rehabilitation, the corridor of commerce, street maintenance building, water depreciation, water meter, sewer utility depreciation, and stormwater utility all have excess funds. We recommend that you consider what the necessity of maintaining these substantial balances are, and where feasibly, financially feasible, consider reducing those balances in the near future through revenue reductions. The response that I received was that special revenue funds and the capital projects funds all have planned future programs and projects, and that will naturally reduce those funds. That's acceptable. Financial condition, we do have the capital project airport, that is a deficit of $51,973.78 at the end of the year. The city should investigate alternatives to eliminate this deficit in timely order. Deficit is due to construction costs that were incurred prior to the receipt of the federal grant proceeds. So those two should be eliminated in the next fiscal year. There are rules regarding to the TIF. It provides that you may certify loan advances, indebtedness bonds to the county auditor that qualify for reimbursement from the incremental property tax submitted in the fiscal year 2020. You have to make sure that those are reported correctly, that you're not overstating the debt that you want to have reimbursed, and that you do timely filing. We did not find any problems with the TIF reporting. Urban renewal report was approved and certified on December 1st, and there was no issues with that. Any questions?
I do have one. Are excess balances,
Yes.
is there a time frame that we have to be aware of on some of these funds that we,
Well,
like years or?
the idea is that we shouldn't have like 4, 5, 6 years worth of expenses. But if you have the plans and you know the estimated costs on those, we know construction plans, particularly for capital projects, are going to take more than 1 year. If you get one done in 1 year, I want to know who the contractor is.
Yeah.
So, yes,
There's no
actual time limit.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
But for capital projects and for utilities, they're not quite so adamant about it. They are more so in government funds, because if you have excess balances, you probably collected too much taxes.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what they're making sure that you're not trying to be a for-profit and make money.
And you said to fix that, you use revenue reduction, meaning,
Meaning that
Decrease.
yes, you can reduce, if we need to, and we
Right.
can, you reduce property taxes.
I had a question on these. You mentioned that we are way under the debt limit at $10 million roughly.
Right.
And is that a self-imposed debt limit, or is
No,
that
that's
illegal?
constitutional.
Okay.
That's Iowa Constitution says you cannot have debt in excess of 5% of your total property.
Okay,
Total
5%.
Assessed
I knew
Assessed
that.
value.
You've told me that before.
Yeah.
5%, thank you.
5% of the total assessment. Please don't get that out.
No. No.
What's the percent that we can have, how do I want to say, it, of our cash reserve? How high what dollar figure can we go, or percentage can we go over what our spending is?
Technically, for government, you aren't supposed to be any more than what you spent. But like I said, if you have projects in mind,
Okay,
but as far as percentage, they're not giving you hard physical rules. They're just saying that, please, pay attention to what your ending balances are. Tell me why you have such a huge balance. You give them proper answer as to why, because we're planning on this street project or whatever it is. And it's going to use our reserves plus some, because we're going to have to borrow. That's okay.
so there's no set amount
There's no set dollar amount. They just
or
constitution.
percentage amount?
No.
Okay.
I think the problem comes in is if you don't do the project then.
Yeah. Then you're gonna have to-
Or what if you had no projects and you had a lot of cash reserve? That's what I was getting at, is
Well, then they'll.
what's the limits there?
What's the limits?
Well, if you have no
One.
projects and you,
1 year's worth of expenses. So if you
Okay.
spend a lot of money and reduce your cash balances, then you've got that much more available that you can keep in.
got it.
I'm curious, with these excess balances in special revenue funds, we talk about lowering property taxes. How many of those special revenue funds are actually funded by property taxes?
Debt
See, like
service,
water depreciation, water meter deposits, sewer, that kind of stuff, that's
property
separate
taxes don't
enterprise.
affect the utility funds, the proprietary funds.
Yep.
You're getting property taxes dedicated to servicing the debt.
Mhm.
Okay? Road use tax comes from the state.
Right,
It's not property tax. And you have the local option sales tax, you have the hotel mo tax, which is a tax, but that's taking care of other projects that you have.
Mhm.
And if you look on Schedule B, the expenditures for 2020 was $15,920,000, okay? Your cash reserves are $14,896,000. So you don't have enough. If we had a catastrophe,
Mhm.
you don't have enough to take care of the expenses if they were the same as last year.
But you don't want us going over that amount too much.
No, not a great deal.
So being
We don't
close-
want 10 million extra in there, no.
So,
Just
so the
right.
amount we have is pretty respectable.
Yes, yes. Catastrophe being that we have no revenue in because we got hit with a tornado and
Yeah.
the revenue stream dried up, Then what do? We still have service to
Still have
provide,
services to provide, yeah.
but you can't do so if you don't have the reserves.
I was just trying to tick through my mind, where we could reduce property taxes to offset these accounts that were mentioned. And as I looked at them, I saw a lot of them were enterprise accounts that,
Most of our enterprise accounts, and you're improving your systems, so
Yep.
those are gonna be needed,
absolutely.
always improving.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nothing from this side? Oh, hi, Misty.
Who am I today?
Thanks again for your time, Jenny. Appreciate you coming in and going through that with us again.
No problem,
Thank
thank you.
Thanks. Oh, let's see here.
We have a motion just to accept the report.
Yeah, I had to make sure I got my papers pulled in front of me.
I'd go ahead and move to accept the audit report as presented.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. There's no other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Fleischner,
Yes.
Cots,
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
Haley.
Yes.
Bates.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Now we'll head back to the resolutions, and under resolutions, the first item is, and the only item, is the quiet zone study update, and I believe that's Liz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A proposal to update the 2014 quiet zone investigation has been requested and received from Bolton and Mink. The proposal includes study updates to the 7 railroad crossings within the corporate limits. An agreement is attached to your memorandum, which details everything, but in general, it covers a crossing review and then updates to the report, including Federal Railway Administration and UP Railroad coordination, probable costs, and then a final report. The fees for the update are estimated on an hourly basis, not to exceed without prior consent, of $20,150. You're aware that the current budget includes $8,900 for the quiet zone update. That number was provided by Bolton and Mink a little over a year ago for the purposes of budgeting. And as they prepared this update agreement, they did review in detail what it would take to satisfactorily update the quiet zone study and have provided an explanation of that that's also attached to your memorandum. It's proposed that this update be funded through a future budget amendment from the local option and sales tax fund. So unless there are any questions, I'd recommend your consideration of passage of the resolution approving the professional services agreement with Bolton and Mink for the quiet zone study update based on an hourly basis, not to exceed $20,150 without prior consent.
Randy, I got one. Reading through this, they're looking at, because of the weather conditions, they're not going to do some of this work until the spring or so. If we go ahead with this now, is the whole project going to wait until the study going to wait until then, or are they starting stuff sooner?
They have indicated they can start sooner. on whatever schedule the city desires. Certainly, if the crossings are completely covered with snow, it's going to be more difficult to do the field work, may have to be delayed, but obviously in today's weather, the crossings could be viewed in their totality so that the field review would be successful and could proceed at any point under the current, ground cover conditions.
But if we waited, it wouldn't be a problem. Because they're making it sound like they're gonna, if the weather wasn't any good, they'd have to wait anyway.
That's true. No, it's the schedule is completely up to the city. However you'd like to proceed with it.
I'm certainly an advocate of quiet zone here in Carroll, and I have been for quite some time. We've been working on this since 2014. It's been a long time coming, probably too long for some people. However, given the current economic environment that we see, be it from COVID-19 really, I wonder if it would be prudent to wait until after we get our budget sorted for the next calendar year and then bring this back to try to do it, partially because it came in over what we anticipate, and then just partially to give us some more certainty for where we're at with the next calendar year budget, or pardon me, the next fiscal year budget.
So what I'm worried about is going forward with this now, saying, go ahead, let's get the study started. And all of a sudden, we have our budget review coming in the next month. And we're looking like, well, we can go ahead with the study, but maybe we can't go ahead with the project until we know it's kind of like maybe we should wait until our budget review is done and then talk about doing this study. Because I don't want to do a study and have it sit on the shelf because we don't have the funds.
I agree wholeheartedly, Councilman Dirks. I want to see this succeed, and I don't think shelving it for any period of time would be a good idea. I'd rather wait just a little bit, see what our budget looks like, and then re-examine it.
How long is what they gave us for that additional 20, was it 15.7 for the update? How long is that price good for? Randy?
The fees were calculated based on this calendar year's, staff salaries for Bolton and Mink. So I can defer to Jim Lighting is also on, but I would anticipate that these numbers would be reasonably the same for this calendar year.
Okay. So if we did something like this in February or March after the budget's done, the price is still going to probably be the same?
Based on the calculation of fees that they have indicated in the agreement, that would probably be the case, yes.
Okay.
That
Just want to
Mr.
make
Mayor,
sure the fees
that's
don't go up by another $5,000 because we want to
Yeah.
wait. That'd be my concern.
and the scenario you brought up is just like what I'd like to see. Let's get the budget done, and table it till after budget, and then bring it back to re-examine it.
Mr. Mayor, I did see Jim unmute his mic, so I don't know if he wants to make a comment on that. Just
Okay,
unmute your
Jim.
mic, Jim, and we should be able to hear you.
Thank you. No, I wasn't going to make a comment. I was just, if you were going to ask, I was going to say yes. We would honor this $20,150 until the end of the year, like Randy mentioned. And if you want to wait 3 months before you start, there's no issue with that at all.
Jim, this is Councilman Haley. Would it still be feasible if we brought this back, say, late March, early April, to get the study completed in time for our budget year to end at the end of June?
Yes, I believe we can make that work. Yes.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, if we did proceed forward, since we can set the timeline, would it be feasible to do that and put the timetable starting in March?
Aren't we waiting to make sure that we're comfortable with the funds though? And that we wouldn't know until we set a
Which funds
budget.
are you questioning, the 20,000 or the funds of the project?
I'd be funding the project.
That's what you were referring
How
to, the
much
project, not
information
the
do you
study.
need for the budget wise?
Well, the question, I think, on how we fund the project to completion, I mean, there's the, part of it is you're talking about the study itself, but the study itself is going to give us different options on what those probable costs are going to be. And that's really then what's going to drive it. And I think even in that, there's going to be various options that the council could consider that will be lower cost options, and there's going to be options that could be higher cost options. And certainly, we may have a report in the end that has options that you like that maybe are more difficult to finance than those other lower cost options. So I think I don't think it's wrong to wait. I mean, I think as we'll talk about in my manager's report, we just will release today to the council, and then tomorrow we'll actually get it on our website, the proposed preliminary 2022 budget. And this will obviously be a discussion point in it. It's not an item that would be funded in fiscal year 2022 because we're doing the report now. But we'll have some discussions with bonding options that will look out further. And I think that this could all play into it. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to come from bonding. There's other sources that it could come from. But there's some good council discussion that could happen, and it may be a prudent time to discuss through those during the budget process.
This project isn't going to affect what we're going to be talking about next week,
It is not.
budgetary wise. It'll be for the next year.
No, I mean, we have
Maybe
the
the
study
next year or
funded
two.
in the budget, but the actual completion of the work isn't unknown
Yeah.
yet financially, so it's not in
Yeah.
the budget.
And that's not going to affect this budget
No.
here.
It'd be
Right.
fiscal year
Which is
2023.
Kind of why I'm wondering why we want
Right.
to wait till after we go through that. It's,
I don't know if
Yeah.
it'll make that much of a difference.
And it may not. I'll reiterate, I'm an advocate for this. This is something I would like to see happen. I've had way too many constituents after me about train horn noise mitigation across the years to patsy it down the road. But I would personally feel better if we got the 2022 budget fully analyzed and just had a little better idea where we're at after the year of 2020. Much difference, Mike, to be honest with you, but
I
I'll feel
don't either,
better.
but I'm also worried about perception that we're kicking it down for $20,000, kicking down the road. And I, in my mind, I just don't see justification for it.
Because like I said, it won't affect this budget that we're going through.
Right.
It'll be the next one, but it'll get you that information. You know, they'll probably have this study, they probably have it done by May or June, I would imagine. And then you're gonna have that information to go ahead for the next budget year when this comes back around and making it then. Yeah.
As long as we can get the numbers really by late fall, we'll be in a position that we can then look at it and come up with options on how to fund that fiscal year 23.
I'll be the first one here with you, Councilman Kotz, to push right after budget's done. Because I don't think it's worth, $20,000 to delay the project. I really just want to get us past budgeting and look at it again.
And I mean, you're definitely entitled to that position. I just don't understand. I've been around long enough to know delaying a month to 2 months, is it a delay or I just don't see the justification for it.
I
I say
appreciate
we
that.
lock it in, we move forward. And if we want to set the timetable of this is when we want the study to start.
Randy or Jim, I have some questions about some of the information in the proposal you gave us, and it has to do with potential additional costs above and beyond the basic $20,150. And my first question falls under Section 3, compensation for services, and number 6. I just need some clarification about potential costs that would be invoiced separately. And my special field and traffic control, equipment rental, everything listed there, everybody's read this. Do you anticipate that any or most of these will be additional costs and that we will need to add any of these to the basic cost of the contract? I mean, some of these seem like, well, these are pretty basic. Why aren't they a part of the contract? To me, traffic control, et cetera, when you're working with 7 crossings. I don't understand why some of these weren't invoiced in the cost. Does anybody have an explanation?
I would defer that to Jim. Sure.
Thank you, Randy. Okay.
Thank you. This is our standard agreement form, so this is used for all types of projects. It's basically a statement that if we have to go out and get that equipment, it's outside of the fees that we're proposing here because it's not what we're proposing on this. I don't have traffic control in this agreement because I don't feel it's going to be necessary. If the railroad or the city were to come back and say, no, you're going to have a vehicle parked by this, you need to have traffic control, that would be an additional, but I do not anticipate the needs of any of those types of items listed in that item. And if something else were to come up, like Randy had stated, if it was going to be something beyond what we had anticipated, we would request approval before we did anything.
Okay, so you're not anticipating any of these costs to be factored in or not?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
You are not anticipating any of these to be factored in?
Nope, we are not anticipating any of those items to be factored in.
Okay, then I have a question about your comments about the Union Pacific, because they tend to drive up costs. And I know you cannot help that, but the section under task 2.4 FRA and UPRR, you mentioned that you'll be contacting representatives of the Federal Rail Administration in Union Pacific. And here's the sentence that's giving me pause, especially since this contract is over double what I thought was reasonable cost. The sentence is, and I need to understand where this fits into the process. Recent changes in how UPRR handles quiet zones could impact the process and have budgetary influences as well and are not included in this agreement. Does this mean that we could have to pay additional costs of whatever UP decides is necessary in addition to your $20,000 fee? And you mentioned even $25,000 and potentially more cost. So are they a part of this update, or do you mean something else?
So that paragraph below that sentence you read is kind of a brief synopsis of what UP has done recently in handling quiet zones. So as far as this project goes, as far as updating the quiet zone report, their involvement would only be advisory. We would contact them, ask them questions about certain crossings, how they would want it handled, things like that, of that nature. There would be no cost to that. The $25,000 that I list out is if we go to a construction project where we are going to establish a quiet zone, to do that work and work with the UP on that, that is when you have to get the services of their subcontractor that handles their quiet zone process now under contract. And that is, they do an agreement for an up to $25,000 agreement with their sub-consultant for the works, the pieces associated with actually establishing the quiet zone. And then the additional beyond that is if one of those, if we pick a type of safety measure at a crossing, like a 4-quadrant gate, where they have to install additional gates beyond what is there now, that would involve UP's engineering department, and then they would likely have to have another agreement for engineering design with the city to be able to proceed with that portion of it. So those are some of the additional costs that can affect the actual construction project. They do not affect this report update project.
Okay, that's what okay, now I understand. I wasn't sure where they fit in. I knew they would fit in if we move ahead, but I didn't know if you meant they would be a part, since you said you were going to call them, et cetera, if there would be additional charges for their consultation. So thank you.
Jim, I got one more. Farther down in the next page or so, it says additional services not included. It said did not include public involvement plan as part of this proposal and agreement. What would that cost be if we got into that?
That we would probably want to get a better definition of scope on that one to be able to provide a decent number. We had looked at, there's roughly 20 different property owners that are directly adjacent to crossings. So it would be, do you have a meeting with each individual owner, or are you meeting with all the owners on a particular crossing? So that would greatly affect the number of hours that it would take to facilitate those meetings. So that's why we didn't include that. If it gets beyond where we need to meet, we can provide that ahead of time.
What would that cost be? Is that a per hour?
Yeah, if we did, on the high side, if we were to do an individual meeting with each property owner that's adjacent to each crossings, it would probably be in that $5,000 to $7,000 range, because you're looking at several days worth of meetings. If it was just for the one meeting for each crossing, it would probably be more in the 3 to 4, but those are ballpark numbers. That's why I said I would like to, we'd want to define the scope of what we wanted to do for you before we provide hard numbers on that.
We had public involvement on the last one, I thought. Because I know we had some discussions with a lot of the property owners, and I thought that Bolton Mink had contacted a lot of them at that time anyway. So it's probably still going to be, and I don't know if much has changed other than maybe the opinion, non-opinion, but yeah.
Well,
I think at the last study, the city coordinated that
Okay.
public meeting.
Yeah, we had it up in the old city hall.
Yeah, and that's what we would propose for this one. That's why those costs weren't included in this study update. That we would probably contact them right here from City Hall and set up a meeting for those owners to come in, view the preliminary plan or the preliminary study update, and then Bolton Mink could incorporate any results of that public meeting into the final update.
thank you.
Okay, one last question. All right. When you gave us the 80, I read in your letter your rationale for the significant increase, but your $8,900 estimate for your services pertain to the budget we are currently in that ends in June 30th. So when I saw the $20,150, I thought, wouldn't you have built in, increases in salaries. Of course, since the original study in 2014, the crossings are going to change. There are going to be changes. I mean, to me, those things should have been built in at the time you gave us the $8,900 cost. And I have the page from our current budget book that gives us the $8,900. So we should have been receiving estimate based on 2021 dollars. So my question is, if people are thinking we should wait, I think there should be some wiggle room to renegotiate what we're getting. The 8,900 didn't bother me. I told people I'm fine with that. But I see a rationale, and I don't see that it justifies when you were shooting us a number for our 2021 budget. And your original study was over $17,000, and this is more than that. And to be honest, it disturbs me. So I'd like to, if we're gonna kick it down the road, I'd like to see if you'd work with us on a different estimate for your scope of services.
Well, I did, at the original estimate, it was probably my misunderstanding in 2019 that it was for 2021. My assumption at that time was it was something that was going to be coming up within the next few months. So it was given as the current amounts. That was my mistake. As far as what we're currently proposing, it was discussed that there's some potential other options for safety measures that want to be included at certain crossings. I have assumed that 3 of the crossings would have additional options added, which increases the opinions of costs that we have to prepare and also adds to the matrix that we do. So that's where those do. If it's not 3, if it's 2, or if it's 1, that's less. That's why it's the overall contract itself is an hourly estimate.
Your original.
Yes, I feel I would rather tell you it's going to be 20 and we can get it done for less than tell you it's going to be 9 and then we end up being at 20. So, I know that the number we're providing now is for, like I said earlier, this year in costs, for 2021 costs.
Your original document, though, looked at all the different possibilities for crossings. And the diagrams you have show, what's in it. So to me, when I looked over your original document again and read the narrative, there you laid out all the different possible options at the crossings, as well as potential costs for the different options based on safety factors. So I'm still thinking, you said it was your mistake. I don't think we should have to pay for this much more for that.
And just to clarify, Carolyn, you're referring to the 2014 study price, right?
Yeah. Look at the diagrams, read the narrative. I'm wishing maybe, I don't know what others are thinking, but I'm hoping that you would work with us and maybe visit with Randy and whomever else, Mike, whatever.
We absolutely can.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
I'm through.
Oh, you're fine. Maybe I would look for a motion to table this until maybe the first meeting in March. Maybe we'd have a little more accessibility to figures and information, and that way we can get it done. And it kind of solves a couple of issues that are here. And with regards to, some of the budgetary concerns, I hear what you're saying, Mike. I get it, but I think it might be better to bring it in March. I don't want to kick it down. If it's not going to go in March, then I think we're done. But
I would move to table this.
If I can interject, I would suggest the second meeting in March, just
okay.
as our budget, because that'll
Oh,
be
yeah, we're gonna have a
the
big
budget
meeting then.
process.
Okay,
And we'll just get all the loose. So that's my suggestion.
that's fine. We
Yeah,
maybe a
couple
table
more
until
weeks.
that's the second meeting there. And that way
So
we
I
get
was
time.
thinking initially April, but Mike
Okay.
said second meeting in March works.
April
Yeah.
was my mind too, so if you can do it the
I-
second
You
meeting in
know, it
March,
can
that's
be done
fine.
in the second meeting.
The first meeting in March, kind of probably maybe premature if it's still a budgetary question, but by second meeting, if we don't know what's going on in the budget, we have.
Maybe we'll just make a motion for a meeting in March. If you get it done early, we can get it done the first part, but yeah, we wouldn't necessarily have set a time limit, I guess.
Good.
I would move to table this motion to table this item until a meeting in March of 2021.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. There's any other discussion? Go ahead and vote, please.
Cots?
No.
Base? Yes. Fleshner?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Okay, thanks. We will get that situated and get that going then. The next item on the agenda, under reports, is the annual planning session work plan. And Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I would ask, I think Laura and if Cat 6 can pull up my computer. So attached, included in the packet was the annual planning session work plan. This was based on the planning session we had on November 9th. This work plan details the priority items from our annual planning session and shows the responsibility, potential work session dates, a timeline, and anticipated funding for each items that is included in it. In addition to the new priorities, this also does outline the priorities that were included for our ongoing commitments that the council had made in the past. This work plan, we believe as staff has put it together and believes it's a realistic timeline for each item. Future improvements on each items in the work plan will be still subject to approval by the council. Obviously, we'll bring them forward as needed. And then there will be some additional financial obligations that the council will need to consider ongoing for each of these items, similar to what we just talked about with the quiet zone this evening. With that in mind, we do believe that this is just a general guide for the council and staff to work through over the next year. And as with any good guide, this should be viewed as a document that really just shows us the way forward on each of these items. And certainly we'll have changes as we go through this in the future. So certainly I can go through some or all of this if you would like, but hopefully we've had some opportunity to look at it. And really would just start with if there's individual questions about any items in the work plan or concerns about timelines, or even if there's additional inputs that you feel that you want as a council member on any particular item, staff is happy to answer those this evening. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and requests that the council consider and approve the approval of the 2020-2021 annual planning session report work plan as presented.
Is this, and I see it's the 2020, 2021, is it the 2021, 2022?
So we've always historically called it the year that we do the work, the action plan in, and then the following year. So I've just always kept that nomenclature, but we've been doing it that way for 20 years.
Okay. Doesn't much matter anyway.
Yeah. It's what we're going to do over the next year. And frankly, some of these items are multi-year. So it extends for a long period of time. I mean, there's items in here that are, just even the first item that shows up here that's on the council screens is the street rehabilitation. I mean, there's stuff that it goes construction out to 2022. Then as you go through the,
Well, even 9 years out right now too, so.
exactly. I mean, when you get into the ongoing obligations, I guess is where I was thinking, wastewater treatment plant improvements. I mean, we're talking about copper compliance in 2023, nutrient reduction, that extends out to September 2024. So this is more than just 1 year even, but it really does give a good view of all those items that we're looking at over the next several years, but in particular over the next calendar year.
Well, I would move to approve the attached work plan for the 2020-2021 annual planning session report as presented.
Refresh my memory on the Timberline Road. I don't remember when that one came in. Was that last year?
Yes, planning session last year, I think.
Yep, it was
The year
last year.
before? Oh, okay.
It was reaffirmed this year.
This year? Okay, all right.
So we have,
That was the only thing I was like, I couldn't remember that one. All right.
we have budgeted money in the fiscal year 2023
Okay.
budget to do some design consideration, just to see what kind of options are out there
Out
and how
there
we
to
could
get
proceed forward. So
people off on the street,
Yep.
yeah, okay. I don't remember talking about it, but I guess I just didn't remember making the point. And saying, that's yours. Gotcha. It makes sense. I mean, it's a,
Yeah.
oh. Any other discussion? If not, and there was a motion on the table, is there a second?
I made the second.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Motion is second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Seaman,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Dirks,
Yes.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Cots,
Yes.
Base. Yes. Motion is approved.
Thank you. One question, Mike, on the rate study, that will be coming up. That rate study that's gonna be coming up. I saw that in there.
very soon,
Okay.
January or February, we're still working to
Working on
finalize
that,
that
okay.
exactly, but very near future.
Thank you.
And that's the rate studies for the rest of the council member. This is the sanitary sewer rate study that's
Yeah.
been working on with B&K.
I trust everyone's read the committee reports. Hope everyone had a safe and healthy new year and seem to be getting along very well. Are there any comments from anyone from the council? Any comments from the city manager?
I do have a few comments this evening, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
First, I would like to just note that the fiscal year 2022 budget, preliminary budget is prepared and was distributed to council this evening. This will be posted on the city's website sometime, hopefully by noon tomorrow. You can get that at cityofcarroll.com/finance. I'm going to point out just one thing in here. I won't go through the whole budget tonight. We'll do that over the next few weeks. But in the inside cover, there is a separate document that we will study in length, probably during the first work session. And this is just various GeoBond options. It really supports two of the main items that the council has, or I won't say main, but two items that you guys have in your priorities, both increased funding for street improvements and also how do we fund improvements at the Carroll Rec Center. So there's a lot of good information in there. I'd also point out the memo. This is probably, I don't know, Laura, is this the longest memo since you've been here? Staff was about to shoot me, I think. But it's actually, we actually made a little change this year and really talked in length about COVID-19 and some of the issues the city's faced with that and just some of the challenges this fiscal year's budget presented. So I think if it's anything, it's a good historical document, but I think also should, give relief to council that the city is in a very good financial position right now, even taking account what we've faced over the last 10 months. So I encourage council and the public to read that memo. And like I said, it'll get posted tomorrow on our website. And I think it's just a really good bit of information for people to understand what the city's faced over the last year. So, so that's that. I also
Now,
want to
when
say,
you showed me that last week, it only had like 10 pages in it. How'd it get so thick?
yeah, it does, because you have really good staff. I have really good staff. And this is really the effort of your department heads, and even various supervisors throughout the organization. This document just takes a lot of time to put together, and I really applaud them for the work that they've done
That's the answer I was looking for.
to do that.
Thank you, Mike.
I have one other thing, and I'm going to spend, as the council knows, we have been working with RDG to do an update to the downtown corridor commerce plan. We're kind of nicknaming the corridor commerce 2.0. And today we launched a little bit of a video on social media to try to get people to participate in the surveys. Carrollforward.com. It's been live right before Christmas, but with everything with the pandemic, everything with the Christmas holiday, just this bad timing to launch a big survey, but we're getting some information. So I just want to share with the council and YouTube and cable television this video. It's about 3 minutes, so here we go. Okay, I need volume.
The City of Carroll and the Carroll Area Development Corporation are The City of Carroll and the Carroll Area Development Corporation are partnering together to create a development and retail plan for the Highway 30 corridor called the Carroll Corridor of Commerce 2.0. The market is changing and will continue to change with the lasting effects of the pandemic. We understand the need to continue to adapt to changing development pressures, market changes, and even pandemics. Highway 30 businesses must be healthy for the community and the region to remain vital and generate the energy to attract creative talent, jobs, and new investment. The three forces driving this plan forward are you, the people, the need to create a near-term resiliency strategy for our businesses while having a long-term plan, and the desire for a visionary and realistic document.
The people who live, work, and visit Carroll are the most important part of the corridor's success. This plan needs to include everyone's voice so that the future represents how we want to adapt with changes. We really want to be a community where people want to live and to visit, to come eat in our restaurants, shop in our stores, work in our businesses, and be active members of our community. The Highway 30 corridor is our entryway into the community, and it's a really important part of our identity.
We need to look at the immediate reality of the pandemic that's already straining everyone, but understand that the pandemic only accelerated trends already happening in communities like Carroll. We need to work with our business community to pivot for growth and seek the right businesses for our future success. But we also want to imagine the corridor gaining forward momentum and going beyond replacing lost businesses and to grow new types of uses.
The plan for the corridor will continue to retain Carroll's character and our community pride. However, we need to continue to envision what new things the future holds for our traditional highway corridors. This could mean new types of business spaces, places for the community, a variety of different types of housing, and expanding our connections to surrounding neighborhoods to meet the needs of our residents, our workforce, and our visitors.
We have great forward momentum and highly involved citizens who tirelessly work for the better of Carroll. The Carroll Corridor of Commerce 2.0 plan will provide a guide to realizing ambitious ideas, become a reality, and market Carroll beyond Iowa. We need to hear from you. We hope you will join us by visiting www.carrollforward.com to learn more about the plan and process to envisioning a brighter future forward for Carroll.
So technology. I just encourage people to participate in that. Again, it's carrollforward.com. There's a survey up there, and there's actually kind of two different survey tools up there, which I think is really unique. First of all, you can, and actually, why don't we just pull it up? Because I think sometimes people
Is this on the
kind of lose
city's
sight
Facebook page,
of
Mike?
what.
Is it on the city's Facebook page or just?
It is, but if you go to carrollforward.com, it'll pull right up. But you have a traditional survey that's down here. You know, we ask people to finish it, but to complete it. But there's also a very unique interactive part of being able to map different comments, and you can see then as people add different ideas or comments or concerns, you can actually interact. So, for example, this one comment up here says Chick-fil-A here, please. And it's actually been liked 17 times. And I guess 4 people dislike it. But it's a really good tool. You can then take one of these bubble ideas, drop it in there and make comments. So you have a comment here of, I like the Stone Bridge crossing in Graham Park. Has 5 likes. So it's a really good tool to kind of gauge what are the things that are out there. So, and really see it in a visual way. So there's 2 components there. There's both this mapping, what's called social pinpoint, and then also the survey. So it's really good if people would get their comments out there, go to the carrollforward.com website and complete that. We really would appreciate it.
So when you click on these, you see likes, but you don't see the people's names that likes.
You do not.
Okay, so they feel comfortable about doing it.
Yep. So
Good.
Looks,
Oh, it's cool.
yeah, it's a great tool. Very nice job to everyone who was involved in putting that together as well as producing the video. That was very nice too. And Mike, I watch social media a little bit too, and I see that you've been keeping track there too and kind of ushering people towards this site as well. Yeah, I appreciate those efforts too.
I need to know where you got the drone.
You know, the video was actually produced locally by Fusebox Media, Austin Scott's group. So I don't know. And actually the drone was done by, all that drone video was actually done by RDG. So they're the ones that did that. They have the drone there. And so they just provided it to Austin's group.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, the way it's must not have been windy that day.
Yeah. Nope, they found
Looks
one
great.
good day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, one
Oh, yeah.
question back to
Sorry,
the budget stuff. Will you be able to provide some type of document or something between you and the mayor of who you anticipate briefing like on Monday night and what tabs they'll cover? So it gives a little more emphasis on those areas.
So what I anticipate right now is we will go, we'll do the overview, which will be basically tab, the tab A and tab Bs. Then we will probably dive into this bonding option, which I assume this is going to take a lot of time. And after that, we'll probably hit police department, and if there's time left, library. But that's kind of what I'm envisioning right now. We can work on a schedule beyond that. I think the biggest item on the work sessions this year, I'm kind of anticipating 3. So everyone's fully aware of that. And depending on what comes out of the bonding options, we may want to go back and work with Suzanne Gerlach on a few ideas or get some scenarios run. Because I think she does a really good job. We can pencil stuff out. To get here, we staff penciled out some ideas. She's just able to take it to the next level because she has the tools, the financial analysis tools that we just simply don't have here. So I kind of anticipate that whatever comes out of that first meeting, so we have our second, so we meet next Monday, the 18th and the 20th, and then it's that next Wednesday that we meet again. It just gives us more time to work with Suzanne. So that's quite, and so we'll, by next day or two, we'll get out a schedule that we kind of anticipate. So,
Appreciate it.
Yep. Good question.
Anything else? If not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Jerks,
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Cox,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Base.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.